Drill sergeants. What was the funniest thing about a recruit said? Story 1. We had a strict rule to write official documents with a blue pen. It's a NATO standard and has its excuses, but all in all, it's one of those things. I had checked about 200 lines of weapons checkouts and ins when at the bottom of the page, it has 50 on one side of the page, there was one entry in black. As you would imagine, I found out who it was pretty quickly, given the entry had his name and the weapon number staring right at me. Now, the military has this thing where you go through basic training for everything. I mean, if you're given a pair of speakers, you're mandated to read the safety and usage instructions and give a signature for it, so they can't be held liable to some degree. This absolute piece of twig and sap looks at me with the most uncanny look when I confronted him about it. After a bit of friendly banter, in front of his whole room asked, "So what is your excuse for using black ink?" "Sir, I've yet to get the formal safety and usage training for the blue pen, sir." He rewrote all 100 entries in blue pen that evening after being the only soldier to get training to use a blue pen instead of a black one. But man, that was a special moment where all the muscles in my face were fighting not to laugh. This absolute piece of twig and sap. I listen to this and I can see both sides. The color of the pen shouldn't matter. If you can write with a black pen, you can write with a blue pen. But if all these recruits are being inundated to read the instructions for every little thing and face consequences if they don't sign off, I can understand if they need to cover their butt. As ridiculous as it seems, they want to cover all their bases. Story 2. Recruit fired all his blank ammo during ambush response training. He crawled in a ditch opposite where the aggressors were and started throwing rocks at them. Drill instructor came running in middle of the road, blowing his whistle and screaming, "What are you doing?" Recruit screamed back, "Throwing hand grenades, drill sergeant." Without missing a beat, the drill instructor screamed, "Outstanding!" and walked away. This sounds like it's out of a movie. This is freaking hilarious. Pretty sure this actually happened in a battle in World War II. I forget where, but some U.S. soldiers were holding a hill against the Japanese and had limited ammo. They were throwing real grenades, but threw a lot of rocks as well. In a combat scenario, you can't really tell if it's a grenade or a rock, so the Japanese would hit the deck no matter what. Eventually, they would get wise and not drop to the ground, as it was clearly meant to suppress their advance. Then, the U.S. soldiers threw actual grenades at them, and they wouldn't hit the deck, and a whole whack of them would get hit by it, when they otherwise wouldn't have. Then they would start hitting the deck again, at which point the U.S. guys threw rocks again, rinse and repeat. Sounds like the recruit knows his tactics. I got to admit, that's a good strategy. It's like those TikTok videos of never let them know your next move. You're constantly faking them out. Story 3. Not drill sergeant, but doing my best to translate ranks, etc. from Finnish military. I served as an instructor for new conscripts during the latter half of my own conscript service. We were testing how well the new conscripts had learned the ranks of our military. They would wait in line, and when it was their turn, I'd show them a piece of paper with the symbol of a rank in it. They would address me properly, tell their name, and say the rank. For example, "Sir Corporal Sir, conscript last name, a captain." The rank depicted on the piece of paper I showed was corporal, which was also my rank, and thus on my jacket very visibly. The new conscript first addressed me, "Sir, General, sir." I raised an eyebrow, and he quickly tried to fix his mistake. "Sir, second general, sir," a rank that would be right below general if it existed, which it does not. The conscript behind me made a chuckle, so he fixed his mistake again, saying, "Sir, corporal, sir, conscript last name. Don't remember the rank you're showing." I said, "You just said it." He went quiet and thought for a few seconds, then happily said, "A conscript. That conscript has the second general written all over him." Oh, man. You ever been in a situation where you just have no choice but blurt out anything in the hopes of you getting by? It sounds like that's exactly what this person was going through. I don't know if it was his fault or not. Either he didn't study or he's having trouble grasping the symbols. I'm sure his fellow conscripts and his instructors are going to never let him forget this. Story 4. Fort Sill, Oklahoma 2002, during my basic. Drill sergeant is smoking us on the first day, playing, "Who doesn't want to be here? If you don't want to be here, I don't want you here. Just tell me and you can go home." We've been in front, lean, and rest for between 15 minutes to 2 years, give or take, when someone raises their hand. Drill sergeant was frustrated for a second because I don't think anyone has ever actually been dumb enough to raise their hand. He goes and gets down in private's face and is screaming at him. Finally, he says, "Why don't you want to be here?" I'll never forget the response. "Drill sergeant, this is not what my recruiter led me to believe this would be like." Only time I saw the drill sergeant was speechless. I ended up doing basic, OCS, and officer basic courses with that guy. There was another Philkin 7 in the platoon, and the drill sergeant asked me one day if I would mind if he called me White Philkin 7 so he could tell us apart. I'm white, drill sergeant, and the other guy weren't. I think he wanted to see how I would react. That weekend, we got our phone call, and I asked my parents to address my next letter to White Philkin 7. Next mail call, drill sergeant, who was really cool as drill sergeants go, is just rattling off names and gets to my letter. You could almost hear his brain record scratch. Worth the push-ups. Story 5. Context. In Army basic training, anything said to a drill sergeant needs to end with their title. Yes, drill sergeant. No, drill sergeant. So early into basic, our drill sergeant was handing out rifles. He asks my battle buddy for his serial number. Battle buddy rattles it off. So the drill sergeant, not having heard his title given, asks him, "Who the hell do you think you're speaking to? A drill sergeant? A jerkwad? A knucklehead?" My buddy, realizing he forgot the title and now fully flustered, goes to say, "Apologies, drill sergeant," but instead says, "Apologies, knucklehead." Both their eyes got wide at the same time in totally different ways. The private realized he may not survive what comes next. The drill sergeant is giddy with excitement that a private just called him a knucklehead to his face. Exercise ensued. My drill instructor ordered me to tell another drill instructor to go suck himself. After a moment of confusion, I did. Drill instructor 2 was super ticked and threatened me with all kinds of stuff. But I was never really worried since I figured drill instructor 1 was just messing with us both and wouldn't let it go too far. I was right. The other trainees nearby who overheard the exchange were convinced I was done. Made me a minor celebrity afterwards. Story 6. In Navy boot camp, we have a thing before battle stations called Amnesty Night. This is where we confess all the dumb stuff we managed to get away with to our RDCS and not get in trouble. Our chief had a lisp, which we all talked junk about throughout boot camp, but never in front of him. We had a pretty short guy named Patterson that could do a perfect impression of our chief. Patterson proceeded to stand up in the middle of forward IG and said, "Why the hell do I keep touching your dirty ass with it? You mother Perth make me thick." The entire division was dying. The RDCs were in tears about to fall out of their chairs. When everyone quieted down, our chief looked at us and said, "I effing hate you guys." But that was frickin' funny. The entire division proceeded to die again. At least he saw the funny side. To be a drill sergeant, you better have a damn good sense of humor. It's your job to think of the funniest stuff a person's ever said at them and then punish them for laughing. How do I become a drill sergeant at 37 with a background in IT, engineering, and a wallet full of Doge? You have to be enlisted already and be a second class or an E5. And the cutoff age is 35 for Navy enlisted. You could join, but only with a waiver. You can join as an officer, though, do your first term, and then become basically an officer, drill instructor. Oh, any other day, that person would be in a world of hurt and push-ups. All the push-ups in the world, while everyone else sits around watching with popcorn. He had better be grateful that chief was not in a vengeful mood. Story 7. Not necessarily what a recruit said, but had to do. Imagine this. 0500 in physical training formation. Everyone is dressed in the proper uniform. Gray shirt, blue shorts, white sock, and a shiny new pair of New Balance dad shoes. Except for Recruit Dumba. Recruit Dumba realized he didn't have clean white socks while getting ready and thought it would be okay to join formation in knee-high green socks. The following conversation transpired. Drill Sergeant: Trainee Dumba, what the hell do you have on? Trainee Dumba: Ma'am, I didn't have clean white socks, so I used my uniform socks instead. Drill Sergeant: Trainee Dumba, do you know what covert ops is? Trainee Dumba: Yes, ma'am. Drill Sergeant: Trainee Dumba, I want you to covert ops your butt over to the barracks and acquire a pair of white socks from your laundry bag. Drill Sergeant: Low crawl your butt to the barracks and get the correct pair of socks on your damn feet. Trainee Dumba stares blankly, does what he's told, and low crawls nearly a mile to the barracks. Nearly dies from exhaustion and humiliation. Sincerely, Trainee Dumba. Oh, I did not expect that ending. That was hilarious. Story 8. I have one as a former recruit. USAF Basic Training, Fall 2002. One of the TIs for another flight in my squadron liked to tell his flight to do war cries, where they'd just scream. It was kind of dumb-seeming to most of us, apparently including my TI. One afternoon, we were all in formation on the pads, and the war cry flight was next to mine. I was an element lead, so first in line in front of the TI. After war cry, TI asked his flight to do their thing. I saw my two lean in and exchange words and smirk. At that point, the lead TI looked at me and kinda smirked at him too. Suddenly, he shouted, "Trainee Roby War, come here!" I walked over. "Trainee Roby War reports as ordered, sir." He leaned in and whispered, "Return to formation. When I ask you to give me a war cry, I want to hear the wimpiest, worst war cry you can manage." I smiled and nodded and returned to formation. "Trainee Roby War, let me hear your war cry," he bellowed. "Oh, oh." He smiled and nodded and looked over at war cry TI, who just pursed his lips. No one else would have any idea what happened, but we didn't hear any war cries after that. Story 9. One of my buddies has some amazing stories from drill sergeant time. My favorite was about a pair of trainees walking down the sidewalk towards an officer. The one trainee, A, was carrying a large box with both hands, and the other, B, was walking to his right and had nothing in his hands. The officer was getting ready to return the salute he knew was incoming, but the two trainees were visibly freaking out. How could A salute with both hands occupied? B got the bright idea to salute with his right hand appropriately and to salute for his buddy with his left hand and a resounding, "Good morning, sir." This really needs the visual, but picture a Ginyu Force Usain Bolt arm position. The drill sergeants were falling over each other to go tear them apart, stifling laughter the whole time. So what are you supposed to do if your hands are full? If you're in detail and working, then you address the officer verbally and keep working. If you aren't, set the box down, salute properly, pick it up, and Charlie Mike. Learn something new every day. Thanks. I didn't know that one. I'd never thought about that before. It actually makes sense. If you're actually working, then you have to address verbally and continue with what you're doing. If you're on your own and get called to attention, then you give respect. I guess the guy that decided to salute for his friend didn't think it through. He must have been tired from having to run enough miles. Story 10. I feel bad for this guy, but gotta say it. His last name was Smelly, as in smelly. So when I had him come into the class for the orientation admin day the very first day, I asked everyone to stand up and give their rank, name, serial number. So when I heard Private Smelly, I lost it. I felt so bad for the guy. Edit. Don't know what fully came of Smelly, but this was back in 2007, and I had heard he didn't make it through BMQ and VR'd, voluntary release. This was in the Canadian Forces. There are names I wouldn't join the military with. For instance, I went to basic with a Private Cherry. I went through training with a female Navy recruit with the last name Guzzler. Was hard not to laugh at that name when I saw it's on her butt. Edit. Was in the Army at a joint training base in 1999. I never knew her, just saw the name every now and then. Can't confirm where she went after there. Just to make it obvious to those that aren't familiar, in the U.S. Navy we don't have privates. The equivalent rank is seaman. A girl with a guzzler as a last name had her rate change from seaman to fireman during school. Story 11. I remember when I was in boot camp, we were in the squad bay cleaning our rifles. One recruit was in crutches, so he was just sitting down, basically watching us clean ours. The drill instructor walks over and asks what the hell he's doing. Recruit. This recruit doesn't have a rifle. Drill instructor. No foolin'. Start cleaning your crutch, recruit. Recruit. The crutch, sir? Drill instructor. Yes, now clean it and say the crutch creed. Recruit. Starts to brush his crutch. This is my crutch. There are many like it, but this one is mine. Without me, my crutch is useless. Without my crutch, I am useless. Drill instructor. Ugh, shut the hell up, recruit. The drill instructor had to walk away and put his hat in front of his face so we couldn't see him laugh. We all had a good laugh about it that night during square away time. There were plenty more stories that made us laugh once boot camp was over. Story 12. When I was in basic training, there was someone going through their locker in the middle of the night making hella noise. So one of the trainees sat up in bed and screamed, "Shut the hell up!" The person going through the locker was a drill instructor doing a random check. The trainee who told him to shut the hell up got ripped a new one, but the instructor was probably dying laughing on the inside. I don't know how they keep a straight face. Man, I remember one night the head TI, can't remember what he was called, was going through my locker. Woke up to him going through it, and I knew my stuff was in perfect order. He couldn't find anything, so I watched him kick my chair so it wasn't aligned and then woke me up to chew my butt. Oh, man. You just have to be alert. You're just making trouble for yourself. You just have to be prepared for getting dumped on. If you don't give them an excuse, they will make an excuse. Just realize you can't win. Story 13. My dad tells me this story all the time. Back in the 80s, when he was doing basic training, the DS was going down the line asking why everyone joined, and my dad was like, "Oh hell, I don't have a good answer for this," and was nervous. Drill sergeant goes to the guy next to my dad, asks the question, and the guy says, "To defend my country, sir." Drill sergeant goes, "That's hogwash. You're here for the money and the education." And that became everyone's answer. "I really needed a haircut, sir." The Army doesn't even pay for your haircuts anymore. They never did. I felt like I'd been scammed. I was in the Coast Guard, and even in boot camp, they made us pay for the haircuts they required us to have. Also feel scammed. Story 14. Marching the troops back to the barracks after lunch, I noticed a recruit with a white stain on his hip pocket. I halted the platoon and got in the recruit's face. Me. "Recruit? That white stain on your shirt better be because you're excited for this afternoon's training." Recruit. "No, Sergeant. I'm saving my snack for later." Me. "What snack are you saving?" Recruit. "Ice cream." I'm dying for that classic drill sergeant. My drill sergeant would correct us when we would say "coming, drill sergeant." They would say, "Not all over my nice uniform, you're not." Story 15. Not a drill sergeant, but a Navy recruit. I was on color duty, and it's kind of windy in Chicago. One time, we did not fix the fastening ropes well enough, so the flag ended up half-mast. Our RDC retrieves me and the other recruit from class an hour later and proceeds to yell at us and ask, "Who the hell died?" The other recruit, without missing a beat, says, "Chris Farley," which was technically true because he died a few days before. The RDC had to leave to compose himself before proceeding to have us stand at attention for a few hours, while all the other ship RDCs came by and made fun, yelled at us, making Farley and SNL jokes. Rest in peace, Chris Farley, but he was the perfect celebrity for this. Farley's routines led themselves perfectly to drill sergeants yelling at recruits, especially that one skit. Don't lie to yourselves, you all know the one I'm talking about. "If you don't shape up, you're gonna live in a van by the river." Story 16. In basic training, stood by our beds, inspection of platoon commander. She comes, walks around, asks everyone questions. Guy next to me, who I'm still mates with now, was asked what he did before he joined. He answered, proud as lunch and for everyone to hear, "I sold condoms and nuts, ma'am." Her and the corporals just started laughing. Couldn't help it. Convenience store clerk, I hope? Nope. Vending machines. It was a vending machine? Awesome. How do I get that job? Go up to one, knock on the side, and loudly ask for an application. I say loudly because most of them are moderately soundproof. They'll just tell you to apply online. Story 17. Asked a private the difference between cover and concealment. Private said, "Drill Sergeant, you asked what seems like a very important question which I'm supposed to know the answer to. However, this private imagining was not being called on and was not paying attention to the question. Drill Sergeant, admire your honesty. 100 push-ups. Forget me. I've been doing push-ups every day during lockdown, and I can still barely do 15 at a time. Story 18. I ordered the platoon to form up facing west. One troop asked, "Master Corporal, our west or your west?" I just walked away angrily and let his peers sort him out. I came out of my office, and they were facing east. Well, that's concerning. He probably thought east and west were fancy names for left and right, like the ones we use for boats. I don't know their names in English. Port and starboard. Oh, that's just going to be fodder for weeks. Those instructors are just going to use that on him for the whole rest of the time. What a way to just confuse someone. He's already confused. I'm sure they are going to talk to him all the time. Which west are you facing? Your west or my west? Story 19. We were on a casual run for PT, nice and easy 3 kilometers. Finished the run. Jerk pump private walks up to the sergeant conducting the run and says, "Sergeant, when does the real run start?" Thought he was hilarious. Ended up running 12 kilometers that day, that guy. He's the guy that asks about homework right before the bell rings. Story 20. Our drill sergeant called us a bunch of buttholes who were not team players. So we came up with a cadence that had us yelling, "Week to week, cheek to cheek, us buttholes stick together." The DS would try to hide his smiles when we pulled that one out.
Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.